What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they are set to begin week 2 of organized team activities. Plenty going on the South Side. We will dive into everything that we are looking for as we head back to the facility and watch these guys in week 2 of OTAs. Meanwhile, there's a wide receiver that, well, could make a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers because, frankly, he was here, and when he was here, he was pretty all right at playing wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll dive into that plus more. It's a great Memorial Day. Shout out and happy Memorial Day to everybody out there. How you feeling, my friend?
I feel good. I mean, there's nothing I'd rather be doing on my Memorial Day than talking some Steelers football. I'm excited to get back to hey, that was genuine. That was genuine.
Okay.
I'm excited to talk about it. I mean, because just, I don't know, it's fun watching more pieces of the puzzle kind of come together. I think we all had impressions of this team before we went into OTAs, and we're getting to learn a little bit more about them with each practice. We're seeing where guys are lining up. We're seeing how guys perform, and I'm eager to get back there for another week.
Yeah, I agree. I won't lie to you. I don't know many people, especially like in my side of the family thing, in my side of the podcast thing. It's if I told everybody today, like my in-laws are having a cookout, they invited everybody over. I said, hey, I got to do the podcast, and then I'm gonna work a little bit. I don't know if I'll make it over there. And they're like, on Memorial Day. I'm like, yeah, it's OTAs, man. There's a lot going on. This is Pittsburgh Steelers football. The season is here. Football is back. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the I guess
enthusiasm.
Thank you. I could not come up with a word there, so I appreciate it. We're going to dive into what we expect in week 2 of OTAs here, on top of a wide receiver that might make too much sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, at least in my eyes, maybe not in Steven's eyes. First, we're going to toss it down to Nick. Some, we're going to say wild news and notes to start off the show and the week here on All Steelers Talk.
Well, one of the biggest storylines all offseason, and really, if it heads into the season, it'll be one of the biggest storylines as well, is going to be head coach Mike Tomlin entering a contract season. And according to Eric Smithling of Yardbarker, Tomlin is one of 10 coaches that are on the hot seat entering the 2024 season. Do you guys agree?
Steven, I'm going to toss that one to you.
Yeah, not at all. I don't think his seat is even warm. I think if it was warm, we would have heard a lot more about it over the offseason and going into the end of, I guess we did hear about it towards the end of last year, but I think that was more media speculating. It was more fans speculating a little bit. I think people were frustrated with how the season was going, obviously before that 3-game win streak to end the year. But again, I think that was more speculation, and I think it would take something really, really devastating, something really disastrous this season for the Steelers to even consider moving on from Mike Tomlin, and that's just consider. I don't think they would actually do it. They'd have to win less than 7 games, I feel like, to even begin that conversation. And that's like the floor. And even then, I don't even know if they would consider Mike Tomlin to really be the problem with what's going on with this team. Looked like Omar Khan said pretty plainly, like they never had any consideration, any thoughts of moving on from Mike Tomlin this offseason. It's just not something that they wanted to do. They don't think it's something that's going to make them better. I think you can make an argument about, it's stale. He hasn't won a playoff game in 7 years, all that stuff. But I think when you get down to it and you ask yourself the question, okay, is Tomlin versus the field, who makes the Steelers a better football team? It's hard to argue against Mike Tomlin in that scenario. So I really don't think he's on the hot seat at all. And I don't think the Steelers are even close to considering something like that.
No, I think it is. For one, this is twice now. This is back-to-back weeks where we have to talk about a wild Mike Tomlin. Oh, maybe he's done. Maybe this is the season of the downfall. This is every year. This is every year. And we've done it back-to-back weeks. It's May. It's not even June yet. We haven't even hit minicamp. This is organized team activities. And we're talking about Mike Tomlin being on his way out, being on the hot seat. I'm sorry, but there are not, even if there were 10 coaches, which I don't believe that there are 10 coaches on the hot seat in the NFL. That's that's such a long list. You're telling me a third of the NFL head coaching list is on the hot seat? I'm sorry, but I just don't. The 10 coaches don't get fired every year. Mike Tomlin being on that list, and frankly, not being number 10, like being number 8, where it's like, there's 2 guys who are less warm than Mike Tomlin. Wild thought process there. There's no way. Like, there's no possible There's no possible chance that Mike Tomlin is on the hot seat. He leaves Pittsburgh when he wants to leave Pittsburgh. That might not be the reaction that everybody wants. That might not be what every fan is hoping for. But that's quite frankly the truth. Mike Tomlin is nowhere near, his seat isn't even, like, he's not even sitting down. Mike Tomlin has no seat in Pittsburgh. He controls that. It is a throne, and he could do whatever he wants with that throne. It's ice cold. It's so frigid. He doesn't even want to sit on it. I'm sorry, but Mike Tomlin being on the hot seat, no chance. And then, like, what were we talking about last week? It was Florio or somebody saying, Coward, saying that Mike Tomlin's going to leave and go to a broadcast. Like, it's early, guys. I get it. There's no football. We got a long offseason ahead of us, but it's too early for this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people are jumping the gun a little bit, mostly because I think the Steelers are going to be pretty good this year, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I know people aren't as high on the Steelers as maybe a lot of people in Pittsburgh or you and I are. But I think this team, I think we're burying this team long before, because that's the thing. Like you said, Mike Tomlin is not moving on until Mike Tomlin wants to. And the only reason I would see Mike Tomlin wanting to was if this team seems like it's headed nowhere. And that doesn't really seem like the situation right now. I think the Steelers are much improved on their roster last year, which made the playoffs, which headed to a one-score game with the Buffalo Bills going into the fourth quarter, or in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. Like, this team is not far off from being really competitive. I think they will be really competitive this year. And the idea that you'd enter a season like that thinking that Mike Tomlin was in any kind of danger for his job is pretty crazy to me. And it just, even my, predictions looking out onto the season, I can't imagine a scenario where anyone looks at the job Mike Tomlin does this year and thinks that he deserves to not be the coach of the Steelers. It's just not within the realm of possibilities for me.
Yeah, no chance. I think the only way that conversation gains any traction is if he ties himself to Russell Wilson and does not let go, no matter how bad Russ is, no matter how bad the ship is sinking, and everybody is screaming, hey, put Justin in there, and he's the only one saying, no, we're sticking with Russ, and the season ends because of that. But quite frankly, he's not going to do that. He might push it a little bit too far, and he might, like, if that scenario ever arose, he might push it a little bit too far, but he's not going to let the ship sink. He doesn't let the ship sink. He gets it to where it needs to be, doesn't get it farther than that most times, but I think this is the team that could possibly push that limit. All right, Nick, what else you got for us?
All eyes were on the Steelers quarterbacks in week 1 of OTAs. Obviously, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson in their first stints as Pittsburgh Steelers quarterbacks. But Brad Gagnon of Bleacher Report listed both players as quarterbacks in make or break seasons, despite a 10-year age gap. Both of them, to him, are in a season that they need to really show something.
Yeah. So, Steven, I'm going to ask the question. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, 10-year age gap. Super Bowl winning quarterback, 9-time Pro Bowler, guy who's 10-28 as a starter, who's got a bigger make or break season for the Pittsburgh Steelers in their quarterback room?
Yeah, I think this is a tough question, actually, but I kind of think I lean more towards Russell Wilson. I know he's got the pedigree. I know that he's been there and done that in the NFL, but I mean, if he's not very good this year, if he gets benched for Justin Fields, does he get a starting job anywhere else? I don't think so. And, in terms of guys who need to, quote unquote, need to prove something, I don't think Russell Wilson is really up there necessarily. I think it's just more about, like, he's got a nice career together. Like, he is, I don't think he's got to prove anything to anyone at this point. I'm sure he wants to, and I'm sure, he's really motivated to have a great season, but as far as I think it's more about make or break as far as if he wants to keep playing in this league beyond this year as a starter. So I think that's where I'd say that Wilson has a little bit more pressure on him. I think Fields is still, I mean, I know he's getting older. I think he's got to be 25 or going to turn 26 this. Yeah, I think he's going to turn 26 this season, maybe. I think Fields is still viewed as pretty young, kind of relative, just kind of in the minds of everyone who watches the NFL, just because he's been kind of hidden on the Bears. I know he started for 3 seasons, but, been kind of up and down. You can argue that he wasn't put in the best situations all the time. So I think people view the shelf life of Justin Fields as much longer than maybe than you would view another 25-year-old quarterback or something like that. So I think Fields is still going to get chances, even if he doesn't play this season, or even if he doesn't play particularly well this season. I think he's got a a longer runway towards the end of his career than Russell Wilson does, given that 10-year age gap.
Yeah, so I don't know if I agree about the Russ, but I agree about the premise of this, of how I don't think it's a make or break year really for Justin Fields. I think it's if he gets the starting job, it's a make or break year. This is you got to prove yourself before you become a lifelong backup in the NFL. I think that's where he is. But I don't know that him not starting affects anything. I honestly, I think him not starting might help things. Like, I think him sitting on the bench behind Russell Wilson for a year, for one, allows the Steelers to look at it and just say, all right, cool. Like, we don't know what we have in Justin, but we're excited to see what we have in Justin. And also a bunch of other teams, if you are a team that needs a quarterback in a year and you watch the Pittsburgh Steelers play well this season, even if Russ is not, or even if Justin is not on the field, you're going to look at Justin Fields as like the Mitch Trubisky of 3 years ago. You're going to, it's a backup quarterback that is on a good team and learned from a really good quarterback and had a really good offensive system. Maybe he learned enough to be a starting quarterback. Maybe he gets another opportunity. I think that's the magic of sitting in the NFL, is if your name is big enough, if your upside is big enough, then you most likely get an opportunity somewhere to do something else and get another shot. And I think Justin Fields could be in that same boat if he doesn't play this year. If he does play this year, I think the make or break, I want to say, is bigger, but I get where you're coming from with the Russ thing, because I think this is do or die for Russ's career. But at the same time, like, I mean, do or die after 9 Pro Bowls and a Super Bowl championship. And, maybe things didn't work out in Denver. Maybe things didn't work out in Pittsburgh, but it's not like you're not going down as a great. People are, in 10 years from now, people aren't going to remember that you played for the Pittsburgh Steelers or that you played for the Denver Broncos. They're only going to remember that you played for the Seattle Seahawks and you were great during your time there. So I think longevity-wise, it has less of an impact. Right now, I think it could be a career ender. Like, it could be Russ is no longer a guy that people are even going to sign, because at this point, whatever. Like, he might turn into a Joe Flacco, but that's about it. Whereas in Justin, I think if he starts, is like may never get a starting job again if he's not good. Yeah. But that being said, he's got to be good enough to get the starting job. So, I think the starting line might be a little bit higher.
Right, and I think that's why I assume that this is less of make or break for Justin, because I don't see him starting more than 3 games at the most. Like, I think there could be an injury to Russ, but like, unless Russ gives up this job, I don't think Justin's going to get a start this year. And I maybe have a higher outlook on Russ than other people do, but I think it's also, worst case scenario for both guys, it's selling potential and selling the future versus selling the past, which Russ is getting a lot further away from the past. And I think that's the only reason why, you talk make or break is in terms of, can these guys continue what they're doing over the next couple of years? I think that's where Russ kind of falls out of it for me, although you articulated it perfectly. Like, make or break for a guy who already has a Super Bowl ring and has had all the success that Russ has, I think he'll still sleep pretty well at night. I don't think he's gonna be concerned if, in the grand scheme of things, if this year goes sideways.
Yeah, no chance. You know what I mean? He's gonna crawl into his bed next to his superstar wife and his beautiful house, one of 3 that he currently owns, that's worth $1 billion, with a bunch of kids. I think he's gonna be okay. I think he's gonna be totally fine. And things will be good. But I agree with you. I think that I don't think Justin is the starter in Pittsburgh this year. I think that could change come training camp, but where we sit today, I'm not going to jump the gun and say that he is the starter. All right, there is another name out there that I want to talk about. I know that we keep talking about the wide receivers. I know that's the only topic of conversation that's happening in Pittsburgh right now when it comes to adding guys and where do you add guys. But I think it's worthy to talk about. And as new names emerge, it's important to kind of highlight them and see if their fits are in Pittsburgh. This one might be an easy one. Former Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver, 2nd-round pick, JuJu Smith-Schuster, could be on his way out of New England. According to Patriots beat reporter, I'm losing the name here, and I apologize, Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal. I apologize if I said that wrong. We all know that I'm not real great with names here. Quote, I don't really see a fit for JuJu here. I think Mayo talked about the competition in the room and definitely sort of a Belichick acquisition. Veteran guy that you've seen, he's played games, stuff like that. This is a different regime. JuJu Smith-Schuster, to me, is not a fit here anymore, and I would be surprised if he's here all that much longer. You look at JuJu Smith-Schuster, hasn't really done much in New England. That being said, Super Bowl champion with the Chiefs. Last year, I mean, nobody did much of anything in New England. I apologize, Steven. And now he could be a free agent. Do you look at JuJu as a name that the Steelers should at least consider, make a phone call to, see if he's interested in coming back to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting name. I think the only thing that would concern me is he had some injury trouble in New England, was pretty limited in terms of how many games he played. And I think it was a knee issue that was fairly serious.
Yeah, according to Albert Breer, it could explode at any moment, quote unquote.
Yeah, I remember that report. That was the first time I'd ever heard that about someone's knee. But yeah, I think you bring him in, you check out his medicals, you make sure you're fine with that. But at the end of the day, this is not a super exciting signing to me. I think if he can get healthy, there's a chance that he could be pretty productive here in Pittsburgh, and you're familiar with him, like you said. But yeah, this guy, to me, this just reads as Michael Thomas with maybe some less upside, like it's just an injury-prone veteran who had some really great years to start his career, but with the injury history and his age getting up there, like how much can you rely on a guy to return to that form? I don't really know. I don't think JuJu, to me, it seems like a signing that you could make, but the only justification behind it is really that he'd be cheap and you would know him, and I don't think that really serves the Steelers in any way at this point in the offseason with the personnel that they have right now and the challenges that they're facing at wide receiver. I don't see how JuJu at this point is an upgrade over a Quez Watkins, a Scotty Miller, anyone like that. It just doesn't seem like he has that kind of potential right now.
Yeah, I think potential-wise, JuJu's kind of maxed out. I will say that his time in Kansas City, which is tough to compare. Like, you look at Kansas City and you just say, like, I mean, come on, could I catch 500 yards from Patrick Mahomes? Probably. I could probably at least get on the scoreboard at least once. I don't know how, but I'd make it happen. He had 933 yards and 3 touchdowns. And again, that's Kansas City. It's tough to judge Kansas City. I agree with you. I don't know that it's like a massive signing with a bunch of upside. I don't think it meets the Brandon Ayuk, even the Juwan Jennings or the John Mechie's. I think it's, a different tier from that one. I think he fits. I think he's got more starting potential than Scotty Miller, Van Jefferson. I don't know about Quez Watkins. I'm kind of high on Quez Watkins. I kind of hope Quez Watkins turns into something. Even Marquez Callaway, I think has some potential there. The other two, I think on any team, they're like the last guy on the depth chart. I don't know if JuJu's that guy. I think JuJu might be, your fourth guy on the depth chart, which isn't great, but better, I guess, if that's where you're at. So I agree with you. I don't think that it's like a major upside signing. I don't think it fixes any issues. I think if you're not comfortable with who you have, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're looking at it going, I think this could go one of two ways. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers looking at it going, we are not going to land a wide receiver in a trade. It's just not going to happen. We at this point, we've given up. It's not feasible for us. There aren't options out there. Then, okay, I get it. Go get JuJu because just like you said, he's comfortable. He knows what he's doing. He's been here. He's a leader. He's a veteran. He's a reliable set of hands. And that's what he is. He's a physical, reliable set of hands. And I think if you play him the right way, he could be a physical, reliable set of hands. I also think that the other side of that is you sign him if you just look at it and just say, we don't care if he gets cut in 3 months. We're not going to sign him with the expectation that he's here forever. We're going to sign him with the expectation of Scotty Miller and Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins and Marquez Callaway and Denzel Mims and all these guys, and just say, if he works out, cool. If he doesn't work out, who cares? Because if that's the case, I think, if I had to guess, JuJu makes the roster over some of these guys. I don't think he makes it over everybody. But again, after last year, after the injuries, after just a down year, after kind of falling off the map, are you still the same guy? Can you bounce back from that? I think that's a massive question. So I agree with you. I don't think it moves the needle at all. Would I do it? Probably, but I'd probably sign. You could probably toss most names out there right now. And if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'd say, yeah, screw it. Give him a call because at this point, it's better than what you got.
Yeah, and that's just kind of where we're at. Like, you know, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel at this point. You're
Yeah.
not finding superstars in the free agent market, especially at this point. So I think you're, I think you're right. It's not. I wouldn't call it a bad signing if they did it.
No.
I wouldn't call it a bad addition, but like we've talked about all off season, like they have a lot of wide receiver fours. You talked about Juju maybe being the fourth guy in the depth chart right now. Like I think there are maybe 3 or 4 guys that I could say that about that are just jockeying for position at that. Like because I don't know. It's just because the Steelers don't even look like they have a number 2 receiver yet. So maybe Juju can be that. Maybe he can. He's proven that he can be that in the NFL. And as long as you're comfortable with the medicals holding together, I think he can get back there, especially in this offense. But I think the medical stuff you got to confirm first before you really take a shot at him or give him a look. Because if he's not on the field, obviously that's more concerning than him not playing well, quite honestly.
Yeah, and I think that they'd bring him in. Like, I don't think the market for Juju would be massive. I don't think you'd have to compete against teams. I think you'd have plenty of time to get him in the building and check his knees, check his medicals, make sure that you feel comfortable with the move, and then you make the move. And, I would view Juju as that kind of guy. I also would view Juju as if they released him tomorrow, I don't think the Steelers would make a phone call until next week, probably. Until they'd want probably all of OTAs to be gone through, and then them to say like, okay, yeah, we definitely need a wide receiver or we don't need a wide receiver. But I think right now there's too many names out there. Not everybody's showing up every day. And, like you still haven't seen Cordero Patterson out there. You don't know where he's going to fit into this offense. Like, I think they want to see all that before they add a guy. If this was somebody bigger, I got it. But
right.
Juju, I don't think he's going to press the needle. I don't think you're going to be in an urgent need to go sign this guy. So I agree with you. I think it's, it would be, don't get me wrong. Juju was a great dude and he had so many fans. I still remember going to his like farewell thing in Pittsburgh, which I thought was super cool. And him and his mom were very much so like, hey, look, I want to make sure that this city knows how much it means to me. And I think that holds some weight in Pittsburgh. But when it comes to on the field stuff, maybe a little bit past where you need him to be to sign a wide receiver. All right. That being said, we're heading into week 2 OTAs. I mean, week 1, plenty to take away. I thought it was an impressive week. I think in weeks past or in years past, week 1, you're looking at, Kenny Pickett and George Pickens being the most dominant things on a football field. Najee Harris walking in here looking like Derrick Henry. This year, he kind of looks like, I don't know, like maybe a skinny Derrick Henry. I couldn't tell you. Couldn't come up with a name there. We're heading into week 2, OTAs. What are you looking for? What's on the top of your list when you get back to the South Side?
Yeah, kind of assuming that Cam Hayward doesn't make some dramatic appearance and show up out of nowhere. I'm looking at the defensive line a little bit, and I think particularly DeMarvin Leal. It's a guy who looks a little bit thinner, at least in his upper body.
Yes.
Not thinner, but,
I agree.
A little bit slimmed down in his upper body than he was last year, which is just interesting because I think they're thinking about bumping him on the inside a little bit more, play more of that defensive end role that Cam Hayward did. And he's got some competition there. You see him working with, it's a little bit of a different position, but Keanu Benton, Montravius Adams working at that spot too. Like, I think of those guys as different players from Leal, but they're really trying to find a role for him in this defense. And, if they can't relatively soon, I'm not sure if they're ever going to.
Yeah.
And then it's maybe time to start thinking about, okay, how do we move on from DeMarvin? But he's going to get his chance to they've given him a lot of leash. Yeah. They're really working hard to try to find a role for him in this defense. I think he's got talent and I think he's got athleticism. So I think, there's a rollout for him out in the NFL somewhere. I'm not sure if it's in Pittsburgh, but we're really going to find out. And I'm just interested to see how he keeps progressing and how they try to use him and how they try to coach him up and keep him involved.
Yeah, I like that. I think DeMarvin is, he said it the other day to, I want to say, Chris Carter, maybe it was Ray Fittipaldo. I don't remember who it was, but it was somebody saying that this is year 3. It's make or break. He's got to put it all out there. He understands that he hasn't lived up to the expectations. I think it's all true. Like, I agree with you. I think he looks leaner, whereas in last year it was concerning. Kind of looks a little bit out of shape when he showed up to training camp. I think that DeMarvin has so much upside, and I'm worried that he's going to waste it because he's just not going to work out in Pittsburgh. And that would stink because just like I said, I think he could be a really quality football player in the NFL. Like, I think he's got that type of talent. He just hasn't put it together. I am interested to see it, especially because just like you said, like Dean Lowry showed up the last day of OTAs last week. It was nice to see him on the field. You got Logan Lee, who's starting to work his way out there, who's also impressive. Isaiah Loudermilk looks bigger, which I don't know how that's possible, but that guy, I watched him walk off the field the other day, and he must have been tensed up or something, but I was like, damn, dude, that tricep muscle's massive. Like, that's scary looking tricep muscle. I think that he's got a lot of competition, but I would like to see it work out for him because I think he's got that upside. Like, I think he's got more upside than anybody else in that group. And if he could put it together, I agree. I think that's a big name. I got two things that I'm looking for. One of them is on the defensive side of the football. Obviously, Darius Rush kind of lit up week one. I want to see that continue, or if it does continue, is Darius Rush a name? Because I think, cool, you have one good week. Awesome, but like last year, Hakeem Butler had a couple of good days, didn't have a good week, didn't put it together. And I get he's tearing up the UFL, he's just a UFL guy, but couldn't make it work long term. And I want Darius Rush to make it work long term. I think he's got the potential. I think he's got the size. I think he's got the speed and the upside. Like, people look at him and they rave about like, oh, this guy's big. Like, he looks like another Joey Porter. You forget he's a 4.3 guy. Like, he's a 4.3 speed guy. This guy's got the athleticism to make this work. He's got all the talent. He's only a couple years into playing corner. When he went to college, he was a wide receiver. So to make that transition, to still be somewhat raw at it, I would like to see Darius Rush continue to evolve, take another step forward, impress people more, so that we could kind of pinpoint him as, this time of year you're starting to pick. I said it to you. I've been naming just like anybody who does anything. I'm like, all right, that's my guy this year. That's my guy this year. This is the time of year where you pick those, those Elijah Rileys, where it's like,
yep,
dude, that this guy's going to be good. He's got the potential. He's been showing it. A couple years ago it was George Pickens. It was immediately, George Pickens looks phenomenal. You can't ignore this kid. It's ridiculous. Jaylen Warren was another one. I would like Darius Rush to be that guy. I think he's got the potential to be that guy. I want to see it in week 2. I want to see him continue to do that. The other side of the football, to be honest, I want to see more of the other guys. Like, we saw a lot of Van Jefferson, and I don't think he was impressed with Van Jefferson. Scotty Miller had a couple of good catches. Quez Watkins did a little bit here, a little bit there. I want to see Des Fitzpatrick. I want to see Denzel Mims. I want to see Marquez Callaway. Like, I want to see what these guys could bring to the field as well. I want to see them get an opportunity. I thought Des Fitzpatrick, he was very impressive last summer. And so impressive, he made the 53-man roster at one point during the year. It didn't hold because he's not that great at special teams, but if he could work his way in there, Denzel Mims is a former second-round pick. Like, I just think these guys have potential. I would like to see them kind of get an opportunity here in week 2 so that we could kind of get more eyes on them. See if this is real options, if they are real options for the Pittsburgh Steelers with the other group of guys.
Yeah, I think you make a great point about Darius Rush. I mean, watching him last week, it was almost surprising that a guy who did get drafted, who was a part of he was in a Chiefs defense that was really deep. He had a bunch of guys in front of him, so I sort of understand that way. But man, how did this guy not get a look last year when the Steelers were really struggling for defensive backs and there were so many injuries, but even the guys out there didn't look too hot? Like, I'm kind of surprised that Darius Rush didn't get an opportunity last year. Really hope he gets an opportunity this year. It seems like he is certainly earning one, at least through week 1. So I'm with you there. Interested to see what he does as a follow-up. And I like what you said about the offense too. Like Des Fitzpatrick, I think you were spot on. He was really, really good during training camp last year. How much is he able to put it together? Does another year of experience really help him out that much? And this is like a little bit like Rush. All these receivers are in just a wide open competition, man. Yep. So it's who's going to take advantage, who's going to be the one to actually step up and say, this is my job. You don't need to sign another guy. I'm capable of doing this. I'm capable of working in this offense and being a starter. Cause, like you said, there were some guys who showed some impressive things, but not a whole lot of big time playmaking, not a whole lot of, this guy, like no one stood out from the receivers room in the same way that Darius Rush did in a cornerback's room. So I think you're looking for someone to really, like, even George Pickens, I didn't think was, and they were limited in what they were doing, obviously, but George Pickens didn't dominate either. So I think we're still looking for that first receiver, that pass catcher who's going to really dominate.
Yeah, I agree. And I expect George to, I think at some point, because I was thinking the same thing. Like, we were watching practice, especially team drills and stuff, and we can't really give away what's going on in team drills, but you're watching team drills and you're like, all right, like where's George? What's George doing? But I also don't think that, if I had to guess, Arthur Smith's going, I don't care how open George Pickens is. You find
I know what
else.
George can do.
Yeah. Like George, we're not looking for a number George. We're looking for a number 2. So we got to go find those. Go find somebody else. And I think Russ fully understands that that's what he's got to do here. But I agree. I don't think anybody in the wide receiver room has really taken over to the point where you're like, oh, okay, that was impressive. And I think it's time in week 2 to start to see that. Otherwise, I think the concern or the urgency to go get somebody kind of continues to grow. We'll see. We head back to the South Side tomorrow. We'll be there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then it is week 3, final week of OTAs, first week of minicamp coming up. Plenty of action, plenty of news. Make sure to find it all here at All Steelers Talk. With that said, we're going to head out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as we've been saying, please go subscribe to our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk clips for even more of the show. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg and a great Memorial Day. Peace.